Administrator of Washington County. I'd just like to welcome you here to Washington County for the Maryland Department of Transportation and Consolidated Transportation Program 480. I want to extend a special thank you to the Acting Secretary Samantha Bell and the MDOT team for being here today. I'd also like to thank our staff for coordinating. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the state and local officials who have joined us today. Board of Commissioners, President John Barr, Vice President Jack Klein, Commissioner Ray Wagner, our state delegation, we do have Senator Paul Corman and Senator McMahon. And the entire region. Washington County continues to grow and evolve. With this growth comes changing demographics and increased travel. That growth has been spurred by the migration of residents and businesses from other parts of Maryland and the country right here to Washington County. That growth brings a critical need for transportation infrastructure that supports and improves safety, efficiency, and accessibility for all. We appreciate MDOT's ongoing commitment to addressing the transportation needs of Maryland residents. We value the partnership that our county has with MDOT officials, which ultimately enables us to improve the quality of life for county residents. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners and our residents, I want to express our sincere gratitude to MDOT for restoring the construction funding for Phase 2 of the I-81 lane widening project. Additionally, we appreciate the funding and support that the state provides for other Washington County projects through the CTP, such as for our county transit program and regional airport. With that said, the number of accidents in recent weeks have underscored the need for funding of all phases of widening the I-81 to 3 lanes. I'm sure Scott will go into more detail later, but we've had 3 serious accidents in the last 2 to 3 weeks that have created complete gridlock here in Washington County. Those accidents have occurred on I-70 as well as on I-81. When we have complete gridlock here in Washington County, with our county only being about 12 miles wide at its core and about 2 miles wide at its narrowest, it creates public safety issues by slowing emergency response times for residents. And it comes traffic onto rural county roads that have shoulders that are not wide enough and that have single lane bridges. The county roads that are dumping these tractor trailers on are not built to handle this truck traffic with thousands of tractor trailers. Today, staff will cover a wide range of all transportation modes. Some of those priorities focus on highway infrastructure and visual replacements, and other projects focus on improvements for our regional airport and our transit system. These investments in our community are key to building a stronger, more connected Washington County. This important improves local mobility and reinforces the role of Washington County as a regional transportation hub. These projects improve safety for our residents and they reach jobs by stimulating the quality of life for Washington County residents. The CTP that's part of the real challenges. All of those projects in our municipalities. Others focus on expansion of services in our rural communities.
Team for your partnership and for your dedication to the transportation needs of Washington County.
community.
Portion of the MDOT Tour Transportation Priorities meeting on behalf of Washington County. First, we're grateful for the time MDOT staff spends each year collaborating with the county, city, and towns on various projects in Washington County. I want to thank MDOT staff for their assistance in preparing for this meeting, especially Sean Barcelona and the folks who helped coordinate the pre-tour and tour meetings. It's much appreciated. For those who do not know, the MDOT team, we provided a slide that shows the MDOT organizational chart, which includes the following agencies, most of which are in attendance: the Maryland Aviation Administration, the Maryland Transit Administration, Motor Vehicle Administration, and State Highway Administration. Look forward to hearing from you all today. Want to give a special thanks to Linda. Linda's up here in the front. Puffenbarger and District 6 for their leadership and all their support staff that help us from day to day. Paul, Jared, Chris, Barry, Roger, Derek, Dave, Debbie, Shelley, Rachel, and Butch. Might have missed a few of you, but from day to day, we deal with a lot of you and appreciate everything you do for us in the county. So they worked with us in regards to design, construction, traffic, inspection, and maintenance related requests and coordination, dealing with our engineering department, our highway department, public works, so it's much appreciated. We have a presentation today with PowerPoint slides. Joining me as presenters will be Bill Killinger, Assistant Director of Engineering for the City of Hagerstown, Sean Harbaugh, the Washington County Transit Director, Neil Doran, the Washington County Hagerstown Regional Airport Director, and Matt Mullinex, the Executive Director for the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization, which he makes me say every time. That's a lot to say. Andrew Eshelman, the county's Public Works Director, and Jim Bender, the Hagerstown City Engineer, could not be here today, but provided some information for the presentation, and we thank them for their contributions to this event. Year to year, we show our transportation priorities on the map. Ben from my office puts together the map every year, and we focus on the priorities from the transportation letter. So you can see on the map for 2025, the various areas of transportation priorities that are listed in our letter. Foremost being I-81 from both the city and Washington County as their number one priorities. I'm starting this year talking about the ARC project, so Appalachian Regional Commission projects. It's a project that's administered through State Highway Administration. There's local access road funds available to rural communities for Washington County, Allegheny and Dare County. So we're very grateful for that program, and we've utilized it over the years. Part of that involves some of the construction we've had at Professional Boulevard Phase 2 in coordination with the City of Hagerstown. And then currently we're in the final phases of Professional Boulevard that'll extend over to Robinwood Drive through the Rosewood Village development. This work is scheduled for completion for next year. Halfway Boulevard was a big part of this project. We're extending it to Greencastle Pike, Maryland 63, and that's nearing completion, and we look to have the road open by the end of the year. Wright Road is another picture I have up there. That was another project when it comes to extending the road and dealing with local access road funds again that help promote bringing jobs. The ARC projects help bring jobs to the community through establishing important access to job sites and resulted in landing Hitachi Rail and their manufacturing business there on Halfway Boulevard. So we've seen signs that if you build the roads, good things happen when it comes to economic development, and we appreciate that. We move on to our slides where kind of the bread and butter of all of our work is the Federal Aid Bridge Program and road projects, but the Federal Aid Bridge Program is key. We get funding through Federal Highway, administered through State Highway Administration, and that's a long process to get through the work involved. So we appreciate all the staff from SHA. Will Pines is here from the administration. It's a lot of work and effort on part of the staff to get these projects through. All the environmental in the beginning, the planning process, all the way through the end of design. So we're working on that project. We're working at Eastern Boulevard widening at Maryland 64. That was a joint effort where the state's providing funding for us to go in at one time and rebuild the intersection, as well as the widening of the road in a phase for Eastern Boulevard. We're working with MDOT Rail Safety Manager Stacy Beckett. She's been very helpful on road crossing improvement projects at 3 locations throughout the county. We'll be seeing those here in the upcoming future, and that's add safety improvements at railroad crossings. The county has 37 roads that cross over railroads, and part of the work that the state highway does is they identify projects with the local governments to identify where gates and lights can be put in to improve safety. A lot of our crossings still are open and may only have lights or may have no other improvements, so we appreciate that. We're looking to remain a stakeholder in regards to the Brunswick Line Mark extension. We continue on 88 projects listed in the transition plan, and we promote planning and engineering work in regards to the US 11 bridge and US Route 522 bridge. So those are a few of the projects we have that I always like to highlight at the beginning of the presentation. I had Chad Rooney's here for the town manager for Williamsport. I had that he may not be here today. He's in the back now, so I had to change up my slide presentation, but he wanted me to pass along, and if anyone, he's here in the back after the meeting. They received the US 11 transportation study. It started as a Pell study, and then it turned into a transportation study. And I know he's asked, and the town asked, that continued efforts are made on the project. There are 3 concepts in the report with varying efforts of planning and engineering. So again, as we've talked about Interstate 81, the congestion issues we have if there's an accident on the interstate, US 11 in Williamsport, many people know it well here, really becomes a bottleneck and an issue with our traffic and travel. That bridge is deteriorating. It's been there a while, so I know that's important to the town, and it's also important to our community in the county. So just to let you know, if you have more questions about that, Chad's here in the back to answer those after the meeting. Matt's going to talk a little bit about this in later, but I wanted to share, we got some information in August from Sean Winkler, and Senior Policy Advisor from Transportation Equity and Engagement. And he wrote to us that said, in partnership with West Virginia DOT, MDOT SHA is advancing a bridge investment program planning application to fund a planning and environmental state of West Virginia. So we're just asking for any future updates on that project and process would be greatly appreciated. Here are some of the MDOT projects we talked about. This, we have some information provided that's on their website. It's in the packet we get every year about what are the projects that we're working on, that State Highway's working on in Washington County. So we have a meeting with District 6, and we talk about the different projects that are going on when it comes to plan development, and as well as any of the projects on the screen, which include intersection improvements, resurfacing projects, safety improvements. It's all what's going on, and it's nice to show, again, how much work's being done in Washington County. So 2 slides, and then they have on the website the major projects. And so some of those major projects identified below, and we've talked about this here in the last few weeks, especially with the US 40 bridge over Conococheague, and then the I-70 bridge over St. Paul Road, how it's really caused major inconveniences with travel in our area when it comes to accidents and incidents on I-70 and I-81. At our last Washington County District 6 meeting, we discussed additional signage being involved with state routes, and then social media posts, how we're going to get together and really be able to share that information. GPS always becomes an issue too when it comes to finding routes when there are accidents and incidents. But I know we've talked here with the local district about how are we going to be able to make things a little bit better. It's going to always be an issue, but how do we make things better knowing that both the state has US 40 bridge closed, and then also the bridge I-70 over St. Paul Road. The good news on this, they keep well informed. The state, again, I'm gonna continue to say that the state does a wonderful job with their websites and keeping the public updated. All you have to do is go on the website, and a month they have it updated. I looked on a couple of weeks ago, and it has a September update when it comes to this. But they share with you the schedules, the dates, and the big push is to have the US 40 bridge back open before school starts next year. So I know the bridge will take a long time, but it was a innovative and creative way the state came up with trying to utilize the existing abutments for the bridge to expedite that work. So kudos to you on that, and knowing it's still a hardship for the people in the western part of the community to come back into town and vice versa, but knowing aging infrastructure needed to get done. And again, we just want to focus on the fact that if there's other ways with the district to help the routes when there is an incident, how we're going to improve that. I came across the vulnerable road user safety assessment while preparing the presentation. I just wanted to mention 8 locations are identified in the assessment, all of which are in the Hagerstown area. And some of these will just be discussed later in the presentation by Bill and Matt. But again, it's interesting. Again, the state has these studies. Matt knows, we talk about this all the time. His office conducts studies in the area, useful studies for pedestrians and vehicles. And just knowing that the state has these resources defined of, what are they looking at for the future for Washington County and the 3 counties here in Western Maryland. Here's my slide with MBA. Talked to Rashad before this meeting and said we always want to plug the MBA and how wonderful they are. I've always had great experiences going to the MBA. They have a dashboard with a dashboard now on the screen to show wait times at the office. Always had excellent service and appreciate their forward thinking when it comes to customer service. And many don't realize that the Motor Vehicle Administration houses the Highway Safety Office. And the Highway Safety Office focuses on 6 emphasis areas that have been determined as major causes of motor vehicle crashes and fatalities. Those areas are distracted driving, impaired driving, infrastructure, occupant protection, pedestrians and bicyclists, and speed and aggressive driving. So again, that's a resource that we have. It's all about stakeholders on the local level, along with the state. Again, finding ways to improve safety throughout. We are always going to push for the infrastructure improvements with the I-81 widening. However, there's other mechanisms. Matt and I have spoken before about transportation systems operations, how critical they are, important they are, and he'll talk a little more about that later. So there's other things to do. We focus on the widening as our most important priority. However, there are other things, and we appreciate all your efforts and out of that office. HUR, Highway User Revenue. Andrew Eshelman, our Public Works Director, usually provides comments on this. He shared with me some of his comments for the group, so I wanted to share those today. Highway user revenue is facing another fiscal cliff in FY28. Presently, the counties are funded at 31% of the original funding level and only receive 4.8% of the overall funds, despite maintaining more than 80% of the state's road miles. A new HUR bill is needed in FY27 to hold harmless the counties from another reduction in FY28. The goal should be to restore the county funding to be on par with the county's highway maintenance costs and how these fees are collected. Over half of the revenue to support the Transportation Trust Fund comes directly from vehicle users, and by any reasonable metric, the counties receive far less than equitable share, creating a financial strain while supporting other services like public safety and education. So we have where the trend's going. Mako wrote an article about that just a few weeks ago, and any support we can get from our local delegation, it's much appreciated. Any questions you have on that, we can talk later. And like I said, Andrew's been a big part of following that as our Public Works Director and how it affects the Highway Department. As far as larger road projects and interchange projects, MDOT has completed the bridges at I-70 and Maryland 65, which are still in the initial phase for planning and engineering work for the interchange loop ramps. At this time, we've been told the project's on hold. That's reflected in the CTP. We're just looking again to see if planning and engineering funding can be provided in for the partial clove relief to make it a full clove relief. Over 80,000 vehicles pass through this area daily. We'll continue to ask that again the ramp work be included in the work. The bridges are part of it. It's important to have the bridges redone, but we want to look at what can be done for the interchange itself with the loop ramp. Finally, the main topic of conversation that we all been waiting for is I-81. So we want to thank the governor, the Maryland General Assembly, and MDOT for restoring the funding for phase 2 and advancing the projects in phases 2A and 2B. The new plan has been recently discussed during the monthly progress meetings for the project. We want to thank Jill Smith for her work and her due diligence in leading the meetings and keeping the departments on track with plans, specifications, and estimates schedule. They call PS&E. Schedule set for August of 2026 for 2A. The state recently provided a plan to put together 2A and 2B, and again, almost immediately was up a rendering that shows the projects involved with phases 2A, 2B, 3, and 4. So they had it shown. Phase 2A would go from exit 1, where it currently is, up to exit 4, which is I-70. And so they would advance that one and due part to some of the design issues and challenges they're having with stormwater management railroads up at exit 5. And then 2B would follow, and that goes from exit 4 to exit 5. So I just wanted to make known again that they have a change in plan, but still to try to expedite the project as fast as they can through the design. Exit 2A and 2B, you can look on the website. I clipped some areas from the updates that they provide, some of the scoping, you can see all on the website about how I-81 is affected. And as we move forward to try to get to exit 5 as soon as we can. And there's the schedule we have. So again, just updated as of in the early first week of October, we had a progress meeting with the state, and they're keeping everything on track when it comes to the project. Phase 3 and 4, it was touched on by Michelle about extending I-81 to Pennsylvania line, and phases 3 and 4. So again, on the plan, you can see where they have phases 3 and 4 throughout the exits from exit 6 all the way to the Pennsylvania state line. Part of this project that we talked about, so it's on hold in the CTP. How does this move forward? So what we've been going through is every year or two, there's a Chapter 30 program. So there's been a Chapter 30 update. That's how projects get involved and get in the CTP with a scoring system. So we want to thank Jeff Anderson and Ed Hernandez for leading this discussion when it comes to Chapter 30. There's a pilot program, and Ed's here today. We were talking about it here before the meeting about what I was going to share as far as some of the insights that we've received. We have a much better understanding of the scoring process. We've been meeting with them individually, and the state's still reviewing comments from stakeholders. And our part is we want to continue to advocate for rural communities and separate modes of transportation as part of the plan. So in this plan, all the counties, you can see in the map where they're being submitted for projects. So any project over $5 million gets submitted into this plan. We have I-81 for Washington County. You can see some of the counties have one project or no projects or several projects. 48 projects were submitted, and currently our I-81 phases 3 and 4 is scored 37 out of 48. So some of the measures that are up on the screen that they are running through the pilot program currently are safety for 24%, access and mobility for 20%, the environment for 14%, equity for 14%, economic development 14%, and land use 14%. So again, they're working through this metric system, the scoring system. They've been very transparent and open with us of how they want to make things better, trying to make it as fair and equitable as they can. Currently, we're seeing, again, lower numbers when it comes to our I-81 phases 3 and 4. And of note, right now, our scoring measure for like the safety portion is a 0.43 out of 24 points. We're scoring higher in some other areas, but that is not scoring as high. And so what we've shown throughout, and Ben from my office helped me put together some of these maps of where the crashes are and the fatalities and the serious injuries. We've talked about, we've had several incidents over the past few years, even the past few weeks. And so we just want to share that with all our interchanges. We have 10 interchanges and 12 miles of road. We have 30% truck traffic, variable speeds of traffic entering and exiting the interstates. You can see at each mile marker the incidents involved in the accidents. It's critical for us to go phases 3 and 4 even to get to phase 3 as soon as we can, knowing there was just an incident at exit 6. And that's an issue for us. But to get all the way to the Pennsylvania line is critical for us. And again, we just want to see back to the scoring system reflective of the fact of the serious injuries and fatalities that we're having, really because we believe we have a unique situation with is how close the density spacing of our interchanges, the on and off. We always show this picture, how in West Virginia, as you travel southbound with similar conditions, before they improved their interstate, you have the trucks can stay in the center lane while you have vehicles on and off the interchanges in one lane. It makes it much safer. So we're going to continue to stress that, how important it is. We know we have phases 2A and 2B upcoming, but we're going to continue to ask at least to start the planning, knowing how long the process becomes, the planning and engineering funding for phases 3 and 4. These are 2 of the incidents we wanted to share. Again, just what happened, Michelle touched on it. Mile marker 6 had an incident, and then we had other incidents on the I-70. But just in the past 3 or 4 weeks, we had 2 incidents on I-81. So they continue to happen. We have 3 times the amount of truck traffic on I-81. MDOT has stressed the importance of zero deaths initiatives, and we're here to say that future investment in I-81 is the only way to trend towards this goal. So again, as we move forward, the city of Hagerstown has a priority of I-81 just as we do, and Bill from the city will continue the conversations about the issues in town when an accident occurs and the shutdowns, cause issues in the city of Hagerstown. So, Bill.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the mayor and the city council of Hagerstown, I'd also like to welcome the acting secretary and the Department of Transportation to Washington County. The city would like to thank Washington County leadership for partnering with the city on transportation issues that affect both of our jurisdictions. The city agrees with and supports the priorities identified by Washington County, and we look forward to collaborating on these issues going forward. The city would also like to thank Linda Poffenberger and her team at District 6 for their continued support. They're always very responsive to concerns raised by the city, and they are actively working to improve vehicle and pedestrian safety along Route 40, which is one of the major transportation corridors through Hagerstown. I'd also like to take the time and thank Matt Mullinex and his team at Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle MDOT. They have provided valuable support to the city in preparing our safe streets for all action plan, and they're continually keeping us informed about regional transportation. So the first slide, I'm going to just keep hitting on 81. The city strongly supports continued effort to widen Interstate 81 to 6 lanes for its entire length of the road. Not only is I-81 vital to bringing working commuters and visitors into the city, the spillover traffic caused by accidents on I-81 can cause gridlock on the city streets, which affects not only residents but also emergency response times. Anything the department can do to prioritize this widening would be appreciated for the entire length of the Pennsylvania line. Slide 2. The city wants to thank the department for funding the 2020 Bicycle and Pedestrian Priority Area Study and is looking forward to the implementation of the study recommendation for additional pedestrian signals in the downtown area. This was a great study. Sidewalks and pedestrian safety. The city also appreciates the work that SHA is doing on the Route 40 dual highway corridor to improve traffic flow and increase pedestrian and bicycle safety. The adaptive traffic signal system installed earlier this year will decrease congestion by adjusting signal timing based upon traffic demand. The sidewalk construction project between Eastern Boulevard and Allstott Court has increased pedestrian safety throughout the corridor. The city anticipates that the ongoing corridor study on US 40 on the west side of town will lead to future improvements similar to those already implemented on DeWine. School walkouts. The city would also like to thank the department for their continued support through various transportation funding programs. The city is currently working on Safe Routes to School project to make improvements at the Potomac Street and Baltimore intersection, and has used the same program to upgrade traffic signals at Potomac Street, at Howard Street intersections, and Frederick Street at Eastern Boulevard intersections. These programs are vital to the city efforts to make our transportation work safer and more effective. Railroad crossings. One area where the city would like to continue to ask for support is with at-grade crossings in the city. There are several CSX transportation crossings that are in very poor condition. The city has been unsuccessful in getting CSX to make improvements. These deteriorating crossings are becoming a hazard to residents, and would ask the department to exert whatever influence it can to address these issues. Again, thank you for your support, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with the Department over the coming years. With that, Matt Mullen next. Yep. Thanks, Wendy.
Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Ms. Secretary, esteemed guests and neighbors. My name is Matt Mullinex, and I am the Executive Director of the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are a federally funded and designated regional transportation planning agency that covers Washington County as well as Berkeley and Jefferson counties in West Virginia. I appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning and present on some of our ongoing planning activities. I'll issue a word of caution. My remarks are going to include a lot of thank yous to MDOT, so everybody just brace yourselves, okay? So the first is that this past summer was the semi-final review for the I-81 Phase 2 widening project. From the MPO's perspective, I want to issue a sincere gratitude to Jill Smith and Jared Klein from MDOT for working to incorporate TSMO solutions into a capacity adding project, which is not typical. So those were recommendations in our Transportation Systems Management Operations Plan, or TSMO. That includes 2 new CCTV cameras and 1 new dynamic messaging sign when you are entering Maryland on I-81 northbound. So thank you. As Bill mentioned, we were very happy to partner with the City of Hagerstown in helping them develop their safety action plan, which was adopted by City Council this past May. MDOT was very supportive throughout this process and provided a letter of support for the city's Safe Streets for All implementation grant application that was submitted recently. So fingers crossed for good news on that soon. This past spring, the MPO completed a detailed safety assessment on US 11 Virginia Avenue from Brookmead to Armstrong. MDOT was a very active partner, and we're grateful that MDOT has chosen to further build on our work by identifying Virginia Avenue as one of the vulnerable road user assessment projects, round 2. This is the first VRU corridor effort that's happened in Western Maryland since this program has began. And I want to thank Paul Nickel with the district and all the good folks at the Office of Program and Alternate Delivery for their efforts. This fiscal year, the MPO is funding a traffic signal evaluation plan for Locust and Mulberry Streets in the city of Hagerstown. This was identified in the city's safety action plan and will evaluate the operations of the city-owned signals along those corridors. And this is the safety corridor profile that was put together as part of that action plan. Very grateful that MDOT identified US 40 as Western Maryland's first pedestrian safety action plan, or PSAP corridor, as Linda will tell you. I'm all about the dual highway, US 40, and pedestrian safety. And the MPO is working to integrate a pedestrian signal project by utilizing our sub-allocated carbon reduction program funding to add pedestrian signals to these 5 intersections downtown Hagerstown. Those signals were identified as the top priority for upgrades in the city's bicycle and pedestrian priority area plan that Bill just referenced. And then this orange highlight here was actually seeing the MPO's project highlighted on a public meeting board for the US 40 PSAP project this past January at Eastern Elementary. And for me, it was like unexpectedly seeing your kid getting an award in a newspaper. I was just thrilled to see it. I was like, you ever seen The Jerk with Steve Martin? I was like, the MPO exists, we exist. Like, you saw his name in the phone book. Bury that reference, don't worry about it. I want to also thank MDOT for selecting Maryland 65, 34 Main Street in the town of Sharpsburg as one of your round 2 complete street quick build projects. Round 1 last year was a demonstration project on the dual highway, and we know how these types of countermeasures can improve safety, especially by speed reduction. And it was mentioned earlier, but the bridge investment program, we're waiting for that NOFO to come back up online. But I want to thank MDOT for all their initial work in starting to develop this discretionary grant for the US 522 bridge in Hancock. This bridge, its current and future freight mobility needs, its connection to West Virginia, as well as the fact that it goes over the C&O Canal, National Historical Park, and it's on the other side of those trees, but the Western Maryland Rail Trail make it a critical asset, and we appreciate the attention and consideration the state has given. And then finally, this past spring, the MPO completed a transit facility expansion feasibility study, working with Washington County Transit and heavily supported by MTA. Through this important planning effort, the groundwork was laid for further partnership on a major successful grant application, the BUILD grant, and we'll let Sean Harbaugh with Washington County Transit talk about that a little bit more, but I just want to express my gratitude to MDOT for being the applicant of record and providing the resources to put together a competitive grant. And so, I know he's not here today, but I want to give a huge shout out to Mr. Sean Winkler, not only for this discretionary grant work, but for all the discretionary grants that are happening in Washington County and in the city of Hagerstown. Okay. So that concludes my prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions on those projects, and I want to thank everyone for your time. And now I'll turn it over to Sean Harbaugh.
Good morning, everyone. As Matt said, I'm Sean Harbaugh, the Director of Washington County Transit. First slide. Washington County Transit appreciates MDOT for its ongoing capital and operational assistance. Washington County Transit, or WCT for short, operates 10 fixed routes that cover Hagerstown and span into other towns such as Maldinsville, Smithsburg, and Williamsport. Within the service area, WCT also operates a complimentary paratransit service and job shuttle. Earlier this year, WCT reintroduced a real-time passenger information with the launch of Passio Go. This innovative technology empowers our riders with up-to-the-minute information about the transit schedules, vehicle locations by utilizing a cell phone app, and service updates, allowing for a more seamless travel experience throughout Washington County. WCT also recently launched a new ADA paratransit dispatching software called EcoLane, which has helped streamline scheduling and improve efficiencies within the program. Kind of as Matt talked about a little bit, Washington County Transit also recently completed a 5-year transit development plan, TDP for short. The TDP examines the current transit system and makes recommendations for where service improvements may be made. The TDP touched on making technological improvements such as upgrading fare collection hardware, adding a mobile pay option, and installing electronic passenger counters on buses. The plan also recommended route expansion into unserved areas, extended service hours, a fare structure revision, and bus stop improvements. And lastly, this is what Matt was referring to. WCT, in collaboration with the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle MDO and the Maryland Transit Administration, submitted a build grant application for design and engineering for facility expansion. This past spring, US DOT awarded WCT with a $2.8 million grant for design and engineering, which is 100% federally funded. WCT would like to thank MDOT for your support with the build grant award and appreciate using MTA on-call services to streamline the design and engineering of the facility. WCT asks for your continued support for the project progresses through design and ultimately financial and grant support for construction. MDOT's long-range transportation goals in this region are clear. Be equitable, affordable, support a safe and healthy environment, mobility between regions, and connect people to jobs and opportunities with reliable and convenient service. To advance these objectives, MDOT is making significant investments in public transit, primarily within the WMATA and MTA service areas, where 46.2% of the Consolidated Transportation Program capital investment, or $8.8 billion, is proposed. 2/3 of the operating budget, representing another $14 billion, is also devoted to transit, for a total of $22.8 billion in investment over the 6-year period. Washington County, however, sits at the outer limits of this intercity transit network where the majority of state transit investment occurs. Current options include an MTA bus connection to the WMATA Metro, which is affordable but less than daily, and a daily intercity bus service to Baltimore, which remains relatively unaffordable. Reliable, affordable, frequent, and comfortable public transit is essential. Neil, the airport director, will outline a proposed solution that delivers a frequent, affordable, and mutually beneficial approach to addressing intercity air travel related needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. It's a real privilege to address you. Talk a little bit about what the airport has been working on. First, there's a new model, a company known as Landline. We wanted to talk about how if MDOT could support the Landline model in Maryland, it could bring many benefits to the transit program, in particular looking at the priority intercity bus corridors. But it could also bring beneficial effects for the 3 commercial service airports in Maryland that have been identified as Salisbury, BWI, and Hagerstown. This proposal is good, of course, for air quality. It takes cars off the road, reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And the capacity of the bus, these are comfortable buses with approximately 35 passenger seats in them. They're much larger than the existing 13 passenger vans that the state is funding. They're luxury coaches, and they obviously offer many of the very same amenities you'd have in an aircraft. Now, the proposal is looking to support, to offer, and promote the Southwest Airlines brand at Hagerstown and Salisbury, brands that we otherwise would have no access to due to proximity. It captures the demand we have up here in the Hagerstown 4-state region and helps direct critical market share to support BWI. Market share that otherwise makes choices to choose Virginia airports, National Airport and Dulles. The proposal helps residents in the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland to park at airports closer to home and to clear security at those airports, boosting the employment of local jobs for the TSA screening workforce. And of course, there's a possibility to overlap or link or maybe even replace the federally funded 5311F bus network that is again running east to Salisbury, west to Hagerstown. It's going in many instances to lower the cost of the ground transportation trips to BWI. The existing bus services drop you off at the curb, where once again you have to check in and complete your screening security processes. With the company landline, customers are able to take advantage of the hub pricing, meaning that your ticket price would be similar to what you paid had you started your trip with BWI. It's an airside to airside operation, reducing travel time and hassle and eliminating those extra security checks. Is there a market for this? Well, in 2024, a catchment study was completed. That big purple area is identifying a large population where Hagerstown is the local airport. And it's a big market, approximately 7 million passenger trips, equivalent to the volume you might see in Jacksonville, Florida's airport, or Hartford, Connecticut's airport. And again, it's pulling from western Maryland, south central Pennsylvania, eastern panhandle of West Virginia, and a portion of northern Virginia as well. Looking at the pie chart, where are all these passengers going? Currently, less than half of passengers in that purple area are using BWI Airport, about 44%. Still an impressive number, and of that 44%, 78% of that is captured by Southwest Airlines. So this is an opportunity to significantly increase Southwest and BWI's capture of this volume. Again, who would use this service? Well, it's a particularly big number every day. Approximately 4,200 passengers go and use BWI each way as it needs to come up to this area, inbound and outbound, right? 8,400 a day. So more than 3 million a year. About 12% of what BWI has in their traffic is coming up from this area. So if Landline had an operation in Baltimore, similar to what American Airlines partners with Landline for in Philadelphia, this is what we're talking about. It could be as large as 20 to 30 daily round trips, and it could bring in perhaps as much as 500,000 additional passengers. And this will help bolster BWI's number one position in Washington, Baltimore. This would be very good for the outlying airports too, because Salisbury and Hagerstown with the bus model could potentially double the number of passengers that they have. And also we must acknowledge the day rental shuttle that's currently offered is quite expensive for people to use. Right now, Hagerstown to BWI, $70 each way, $140. And to get to Salisbury, $89 each way, $178 round trip. This sample fare, looking at Atlantic City, New Jersey, we can see that sometimes the bus route from Atlantic City to Philadelphia to Cancun, the bus trip didn't cost anything at all, if you compared with the starting trip there in Philadelphia. So some of those advantages come with the interlining pricing. We're paying one ticket price to one airline. Of course, we know what a powerful, strong hub BWI is. Nonstop service to 70 destinations, average of 204 daily departures. So we could potentially link up other out-of-state markets to BWI if we have a landline presence there. Lancaster, Harrisburg, Wilmington, are all within a reasonable driving distance. So this would give us critical mass. So the Hagerstown Airport likes this idea, Salisbury likes it. We both have the same air service development consultants, so they like the idea. And Landline likes the idea, but we won't say anything to Southwest about it unless MDOT, MAA likes the idea of BWI. But isn't it true, Southwest is going through some change right now. They're changing their model. And as they make these changes, it could be that some of the passengers that purchased from them in the past may not be so attracted to the new Southwest. And so we need to take measures to keep those numbers up in support of BWI Airport and their impressive operation. So how could they do that? Well, offer access and space to Landline there in the terminal, and potentially a minimum revenue incentive of marketing the service. These are the things that are normally done to help stand up new routes, whether it be a landline model or air service. But Southwest, interestingly, within their own strategy document, talks about the need to drive incremental passenger growth without the need for additional aircraft and having airline partnerships. Well, this would be both of them. I won't bore you with the details of all of this and what a minimum revenue guarantee would be. Happy to share these slides with anyone else. But for a rather affordable amount of money, we could support all three of the commercial airports. And we could help Southwest as they go through this transition period. They have no regional feeder airlines that are feeding back to the hub. And As they change from a point-to-point carrier to more a hub-and-spoke model, they need a way to bring in those passengers. And so perhaps a bus can be used, a bus line can be used to accomplish that. We only need to capture 1% of our traffic up here to be 75% full. But then we could offer 4 daily round trips, constantly bringing us back to a hub for all those exciting connections. And of course, it would be good financially for all three. Shifting gear, we want to talk a little bit about some of our airport projects. This was drone footage as a part of the sighting study we're doing. The replacement tower would literally tower over the existing towers. See how short it is there? So we want to thank Ashish and MAA and MDOT for their support of this sighting study that would get us to a point of a 30% design. And obviously we can see with the taller tower all aspects of the airfield can be seen. We're excited to embark upon an expansion of our terminal. It will be about 20% larger on the east side of the terminal. I'll advance forward what it could look like in there to see the pre-security public side of the terminal. We'll make an L shape. And then we hope in the future, in a phase 2 project, to take the ticket counters and run them all the way to the east wall and then use all that area in the back that we've built out and convert it for support space for air. Another pressing need of the airport to let you know about is we've had so much growth that we need a replacement fuel farm. The one that we have is too small and it's old. It's here on the east side and where that blue circle is. Ideally, it should be on the west side, closer to our fixed base operation, the Ryder Jet Center. And as we'll discuss, we have the Sierra Nevada Corporation campus there. We have some older structures. The Civil Air Patrol is located. We have a mixed airport inn restaurant that's been there for about a half century. And our Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics, Maryland's only Part 147 school, training mechanics, and they're expanding. Right now they have about 140 students. So we're describing the possibility of replacing the fuel farm, but also potentially acquiring the land in blue that we don't currently own. That's where Civil Air Patrol is, and the restaurant is. And that will allow us to expand the Sierra Nevada Corporation campus, build quite more parking. Their employment base is swelling, going from 450 jobs maybe to a peak of 750 jobs. They need parking and they need additional hangar space. And then interestingly, if we own this land, then if you see the building marked 68, that's where the PAA campus is. They could taxi from their vehicles down to the airfield to the south. We also have a couple other projects to update you on. The runway visibility zone object-free area project, we hope to go to construction on that next year. And then we'll be doing some rehabilitation of pavement on various taxiways and in between our various T-hangar buildings in our complex there on the northwest side of the area. So through all of this, we've enjoyed the cooperation, the expertise, and the financial support of MDOT, MAA, Ashish, Sean, and his team. We just want to say how great they are to work with. We've noted in the CTP that $3 to $3.5 million has been set aside for that system of airports. I say system because really it's about 30 airports that small office oversees. And as we undertake all of these projects, one of the biggest expenses we have are soft costs. And due to a lack of resources historically, those are things that we've not been able to cover on the state level. But if we could get their budget to $4.5 million and maintain that, well, then they would have the resources for the 16 airports that are regularly receiving federal grants. Those 16 airports have about $300 million in project needs just in the next 4 years, 2025, 2029. So give Ashish and his team, please, $4.5 million, maintain it, and then we can pull down $300 million worth of project value for Maryland so that those investments don't go to other states. Thank you very much for your attention to this presentation and while we're doing sport transportation in Maryland. We'll now turn our attention over to Scott.
Thanks, Ian. So with that, we have our name and contact information at the end of the presentation, but with that, please, Acting Secretary Biddle, turn it over to you and your staff.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hobson. I would just love to start by going off script, and please, if everyone just give a round of applause to this amazing team from Washington. I was talking with Scott a little bit before the meeting started this morning, telling him how a couple other counties have started off their CTP meetings by presenting to us what their priorities are. And I didn't realize just how in-depth we were gonna get this morning and how beneficial it really is to not just hear about the priorities on the highway side. A lot of times it is what we talked about at these meetings, but the true multimodal spirit of what was presented this morning, I think is just so encouraging. Even giving the shout out to the MBA, talking about opportunities in aviation, bringing us solutions and opportunities that really get to the core of what we're trying to accomplish statewide. I think there's a real spirit of partnership in this room. Part of me wants to just throw this whole speech out and just get to business on the things that were presented here this morning, because I think what you're gonna hear from me, what you're gonna hear from the team, is a lot of alignment in those shared priorities. A lot of what is on the county's radar is on our radar, and we are just doing our very best to work with the resources in front of us to deliver as many projects that, you know, are all about the safety, really. And I think that's what you're gonna hear from here, it's what you're gonna hear from Administrator Pines, but I'm just so impressed and encouraged by what was shared so far this morning. So I'll get down to the prepared part of this all, but I do just want to thank you again, and the work that went into this is, I know, tremendous, and I think it speaks a lot to the talent that's here in the county. All right, we'll start from the top. Good morning, everyone. I'm Samantha Biddle, Acting Secretary of the Maryland Department of Transportation. Thank you for the hospitality and inviting us here to present our 6-year Consolidated Transportation Program, more commonly known as the CTP. Various members of the MDOT team here this morning. Some of them will come up and present on each of their modes. Thank you for the shout outs to them already. We have an amazing team, and I know that we are going to get the work done that is needed here. We are going to try to keep our remarks concise, partially because I think the county folks did a lot of the work for us already in presenting on what the priorities and projects are here. But we do want to make sure that there's time for that dialogue, for the Q&A, and to be able to talk through things a little bit further. I want to take a quick moment to talk about government shutdown, because it's something that's on our radar, and I'm sure that there is a federal workforce here as well in Washington County that may be impacted. So I want to talk a little bit about the efforts being taken by the state to acknowledge and help with the impact it's having on Maryland families. Governor Moore is taking action to support and protect all Marylanders affected by the lapse in federal funding, and working to ensure that everyone is aware of protections for federal workers and of all of the vital programs to help them keep going, such as Medicaid and SNAP. Resources on unemployment insurance, housing, utilities, and loan programs can be found on the governor's website, and that's governor.maryland.gov. For now, MDOT continues to operate as usual, and we will always work to protect Marylanders, our projects, and our investments. Turning to our meeting over the summer we had with some of you down at the NACO conference. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us. We always appreciate the opportunity to connect and understand how we can partner together to accomplish many of these shared goals. One of the things we talked about, which is also highlighted in the presentation this morning, was the request for funding assistance on the air traffic control tower. And so we're going to continue working through those efforts. Thank you also to the airport for hosting this week. I think the Advanced Air Mobility Council was held out here. Sorry to miss it, but I know that it's always great to be able to bring folks from all parts of the state, all parts of the industry out to these regional assets to really help them shine. If we turn to our draft CTP, MDOT is utilizing every dollar to make strategic investments in the Moore-Miller administration's transportation priorities. Broadly, these priorities are further enhancing safety, maintaining our systems that it's in a state of good repair, and driving economic growth across the state. The draft CTP is an exciting follow-up to a productive legislative session, and I want to thank our partners in the General Assembly, who through Governor Moore's leadership and their support, we were able to secure approximately $400 million in additional transportation revenue every year. With these additional dollars, MDOT is stretching the funding and combining it and matching it with federal resources and financing options to turn $400 million into an approximate $700 million in additional transportation funding. And without these resources, MDOT would have seen sustained and deepened cuts to transportation, and thankfully that is not necessary. Instead, I can share that the draft CTP includes investments in Washington County and all across Maryland. To get into the details of the draft CTP, the balanced 6-year capital budget is approximately $21.5 billion, which is a modest increase of about $300 million over the final CTP published last January. Any additional dollars are being used to take significant action to further maintain our system, keep it in working order, ensuring millions of Marylanders can get where they need to safely and reliably. I don't think I need to highlight the highlights too much because I think they've been talked about already, but I do want to, for the record, make sure that we're all taking note of the construction funding for phase 2 of ID1 to improve safety and mobility along that corridor, the deployment of Complete Streets Quick Build project to improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety in the intersection of North Church Street and Main Street, and enhancing safety along nearly 7 miles of US 40 with this pedestrian safety action plan project. The draft CTP does keep highway user revenue funding at the current level through FY 2027. These highlights aside, I know that there are still unfunded needs and unfunded priorities, but I am confident that through the partnerships and working relationships that we have with everyone here in Washington County that we will continue to make progress on those priorities as well. It is especially encouraging to know that so much of our alignment is in the area of safety, and I want to highlight that MDOT is serious about safety, and that is directed in the draft CTP, not just in the investments in I-81, but also through things like pedestrian safety. But we know there is still work to do, as highlighted by Director Hobbs and others. We are facing ongoing challenges, not the least of which is on our interstate corridors. I know Administrator Pines and our District Engineer, Linda Puffenberger, can talk more specifically even about what we're seeing, in the most recent days on I-70 and talk about our immediate action plans there going forward. I do just also want to highlight the county's efforts in developing their own state strategic highway safety plan, another critical step towards making sure that we are doing as much as we can to drive towards our safety goals of 0 deaths. I will now turn things over to Administrator Pines, State Highway Administration, for more updates on the highway side. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary, and good morning, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Will Pines, Maryland State Highway Administrator, and I'm joined today by our District Engineer, who needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway, Linda Puffenberger, who's doing great work to help meet the local needs every day. As the Secretary mentioned, we are serious about safety at the department. It's our top priority. And as a clear example of that, we are pleased to cover one of our quick build complete streets projects for 2025 right here in Washington County on Maryland 34 in Sharpsburg. Quick build projects are smaller upgrades that can make a big difference on safety. And this project has speed cushions, parking restrictions, and new crosswalks that will make it safer for motorists and pedestrians, making the area more walkable. We're also advancing the I-81 corridor, as everybody's talked about a lot here this morning. And as you know, phase 1 was completed in 2020. We anticipate the construction of phase 2A from Maryland 63, Maryland 68 to the I-70 interchange to start in 2027. And phase 2B from I-70 to north of Halfway Boulevard to start in 2028. The new $23.6 million I-70 bridge that spans the Crystal Falls Drive opened in May, and the $17.8 million I-68 bridge over Creek Road also is open to traffic, and final construction is wrapping up as we speak. Work on the I-70 bridges over I-81, US 11, and Norfolk Southern Railroad is anticipated to be done in late 2027, and the new I-70 bridge over St. Paul Road is under construction now. We expect that to complete in mid-2027, and all through lanes will be maintained throughout construction. The rehabilitation of the historic US 40 bridge over Conococheque is underway. And I know that detour for the project, this $23.9 million project, is challenging, but it's necessary. You saw earlier the picture that Scott provided on the bridge. It is a historic bridge that has a unique design to it that requires that detour. And please note that while the project continues through mid-2027, the detour will end in the summer of 2026, so we won't need the detour for the entire construction period. Improvements at Maryland 64 and Maryland 66 intersections south of Smithsburg to add turn lanes is expected to start in the spring of 2026 with the completion by early 2027. We're also working on a pedestrian safety project on US 11 from Brookmead Drive to Armstrong Avenue with high visibility crossings, traffic signal phasing, and other features. A $5.1 million sidewalk improvement project on US 40 from Eastern Boulevard to All-Star Court will be completed by the end of this year. And as the Secretary noted, we're also designing the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan project on US 40 from Garland Grove Boulevard to All-Star Court. And we had our first workshop on that project in January, and we'll be back in the new year with concepts to get more input from the public. Finally, parks in the county will also benefit from 2 transportation alternatives grant. One is a $38,800 project to reconfigure the Camp Loop Trail in Greenbrier State Park, and the second being a $1.5 million project to repair and rehabilitate more than 21 miles of the C&O Canal National Park towpath. In closing, I also want to echo the appreciation for the partnership with the county on the many local projects that we have together and that we collaborate on to deliver together. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Travis with the Maryland Transit Administration.
Thank you, Will, and good morning, everyone. I'm Travis Johnston, Local Transit Support Director at the Maryland Transit Administration. The prioritization of transit in the Moore-Millers administration's budget ensures a bright future for transit across the state. A robust public transit system also means economic and social mobility. As you know, our locally operated transit systems are critical partners in providing transit throughout the state. MTA is proud to support Washington County by providing nearly $4 million in grants to support your local transit operations. This includes ongoing preventative maintenance, 1 new small bus, and 2 new heavy-duty buses. Thank you for your time. I'll now turn it over to Rashad with the Motor Vehicle Administration.
Thank you, Travis. Good morning. My name is Rashad Johnson. I'm the Director of Field Operations with the Motor Vehicle Administration. I am proud to report that the MVA's average wait time at the Hagerstown branch was only 5 minutes for the 2nd year in a row. This achievement is made possible because of the dedicated MVA employees who prioritize efficiency and accessibility for all Marylanders. We continue to encourage customers to sign up for My MVA accounts to take advantage of more than 60 transactions online, but if they need to come to the Hagerstown branch office, customers can take advantage of our many one-stop shop governmental services. As part of our ongoing outreach, we partnered with Williamsport High School to conduct a teen driver safety event, which educated more than 300 students. Additionally, we conduct a Car Fit training session in partnership with Emeritus Health. Car Fit is a free educational program developed by the American Society on Aging in collaboration with AAA, AARP, and AOTA, which helps older drivers improve the fit between themselves and their vehicles to enhance comfort and safety. The MVA and our partners remain committed to developing solutions to save lives on our roadways to reach our goal of 0 fatalities. Last year, 14 people lost their lives in Washington County, and so far this year, there have been 10 fatalities. While we are seeing a decrease so far this year, we know there's still work to be done. The MVA recently announced more than $12.9 million in highway safety grants to organizations and law enforcement to address distracted, impaired, and aggressive driving, as well as pedestrian and bicyclist safety. I would also like to commend Washington County for their strategic highway safety plan, which has been in place to complement the state's plan. A new state plan will be released in January, and we look forward to our continued collaboration to address specific needs in the community. Thank you for listening. Up next is Ashish with Maryland Aviation Administration.
Good morning, everyone. Commissioners, delegation, it's great to be back with you here in Hagerstown and Washington County. First, I want to thank Neil. It's an excellent presentation because it makes my job a lot easier. All I have to say is I agree with him and I'll just sit down. But I think the secretary will say, no, you need to say a little more. So I will take an opportunity while I do have the mic and just add our comments to what Neil shared. We agree with the airport's progress. We agree with the airport's needs. We know the airport has infrastructure improvement program needs. And our job, our role is to help that airport, your airport, out. We know there's an economic value with the Hagerstown Regional Airport. Just to give you round numbers, statewide, our economic value of our regional airports is over $1.4 billion, just the regional airports. That also includes 10,000 jobs. Here, Hagerstown Regional, we have direct, indirect, over 1,800 jobs. So economic value, the transportation value of that airport is significant. And so MAA's role in supporting this airport continues. We have a $3 million grant program this year, and we'll continue to work on appropriating those funds as best as we can to Hagerstown Regional. This year, we're providing funding support towards the siting study for the new tower, as well as the Hagerstown's terminal building expansion. So total is about $590,000 this year, but we look forward to continuing our support both financially and in the administrative side in addressing the needs at this airport. So thank you everyone for the opportunity. Now it's my pleasure to return it back to Secretary Biddle.
Thank you, Asha. It's really nothing else for me in closing. I would just turn it back over to Scott to facilitate any question and answer. But again, thank you so much for having us here today. And I'd also just say for the airport, please bore me with the details. I want the whole PowerPoint. I really do want to dig in on that as well. It's great. Thanks, Scott.
So with that, is there any, Secretary Bill said, is there any questions or comments from our commissioners, delegations? President Barr.
I just want to say thank you to our partners at the state. We appreciate this opportunity. And also, when you came over the mountain from the east this morning, I hope you realize what we all know here, that every day is a beautiful day in Washington County. And we appreciate the partnership. And, as you can see, we have some unique opportunities, if you will, with our highway infrastructure and the airport and the intersection of 70 and 81. So, again, thank you for reaching out and appreciate the interaction we had with the state government.
Secretary Dean, thank you. District Engineer, State Highway Section 6. I want to praise her because she replaced someone who was very good working named Penny Crawford. She filled in admirably. I've been on several committee meetings with her, and we know she has the interest in Washington County engineering. And now that I've talked you up, I don't want to diminish what our priorities from the tower, 81 and 70. Over 15 years, I've spoken about 81 being finished to Pennsylvania line. Every second of the delay, every hour of delay on 81 or 70 was hundreds of thousands of dollars of economic loss to this community. That is why it's always been a priority of Washington County to have that stretch highway completed, but not to minimize the safety feature and the loss of lives that have been on those highways. Second, I want to bring up, and I spoke to you in private for this, and with all respect, when we have these construction projects on 81 and 70, we need to make sure, and again, a disclaimer, I'm not an engineer, I'm not criticizing anyone, but we need to make sure these construction sites are adequately provided safety. And I had a citizen tell me this morning he'd rather see a 10-mile backup on 70 than see what happened to our community yesterday and the week before. It was awful to our citizens to be 5-6 miles of tractor trailers backed up from my hometown in Williamsport to Clear Street. People couldn't get out of their driveways. So I'm not affixing blame or assigning responsibility to anyone. I'd just like to make sure that we're going to, in advance, take care of these situations, that we don't have this disturbance to our residents who, I'm sure our highway director and his team are filled with phone calls. So that being said, there was maybe a a request from me, that with the closure, and believe me, we're grateful for the funding for the speedway they're supporting. But we are incurring a lot of extra costs, maintaining those side roads, repairing shoulders. If there can be any consideration of some extra funding for us to help offset those extra costs, you guys know this winter, I haven't really talked to Zane about this, but we're gonna have to have that area prepared for snow and ice removal too, for any incidents that could occur on 70 or 81 and on these back roads. So any additional funding that could help us offset that cost would be greatly appreciated. And then in closing, I thank you all for coming here. It's very important for the community and the leaders here to see that you're listening, and I do believe you are listening. Thank you.
Morning, Randy Wagner, Washington County Commissioners. It'd be redundant for me to go over all that again. I think Commissioner Khan did a wonderful job of expressing our concerns. Secretary Biddle and all of our staff, I think what I heard here this morning is a little different from what I've heard in the past. I think everybody's really listening, and there's a whole lot of good presentation. All the staff seems to be on board. We were prepared for this, and I think everybody did a wonderful job. We got our point across, you listened, and that's all I can ask. Thank you.
Thank you for being here again. Just reinforce what the other commissioners have said. I've got a big thanks to our staff who stay on top of these issues and work very hard to make sure that they're exploring all the options and understand the detail. And I do believe that they're communicating effectively with the state leadership, so I applaud them for that. I just hope you can keep an open mind and continue to work with us, explore every option that's possible. And sometimes it might not be evident, but there's probably possibilities that you might not have thought about to address some of our issues. And then I also like to thank our other community leaders who have engaged, whether it's Mr. Kirchhoff or others in our delegation that have been working very hard to support Washington County's needs. So with that, I just thank everyone for being here.
Morning. Thank you for coming. 3 thoughts, actually 4. When you leave here today, Interstate 81, Interstate 81, Interstate 81, and the control tower at Hagerstown Regional. Thank you.
Thank you, and then a couple of things. First of all, Secretary, thank you for coming here. Thank you for the presentation everyone did here today. I think Secretary, this is probably the 5th or 6th Secretary that I've been involved with over the last 8 to 10 years. And again, as the Commissioner said earlier, I appreciate the positive energy that's involved today in a good conversation. I would like to just touch on a couple of things, follow up on our conversation that we had in Mako. First off, with the airport, really appreciate your enthusiasm, and what really struck out to you was the word agreement. You're in agreement with everything Neil presented. I think we're all in agreement. We want to see this thing, but what we really need is a partner. We need to move past the agreement and move forward to a greater partnership. When I look through the CTP and understanding that some of the airports are obviously owned by the state, particularly BWI and Martins, but when we see that Martins is getting a new tower, we see Martins is getting a new runway, Martins is getting a new taxiway. We got a runway extension many, many years ago. We're still waiting for that one for the tower. Understanding that is a federal issue, but that has not been helpful on that end too. We need some additional help. We've seen it, as the CPU has looked at it, close to about $80 or $90 million program at Martins, and we're looking for $5 to $10 million for a tower here. But we all agree to really unleash some economic development opportunities here and enhancements. And again, when we look at the BWI, there's hundreds of millions of dollars there. So I understand a little bit of apples and oranges, but at the same time, I understand we're talking $3 million looking at all the airports. Hagerstown is one of about 30, maybe, roughly. It doesn't really seem equitable across the state. And when we continue that conversation, we talk about transit, we talk about that some in Ocean City. I'm a big supporter of extending transit here to the western part of the state. We were the lead sponsor of a bill a few years ago and had put and amended into to do a March study. What came out of that, such one earlier, is a bus. And I don't think anyone foresaw spending millions of dollars on a Mark study to enhance rail service to Western Maryland, to ultimately be presented with a bus. And so I know that I would continue to advocate, I talked to multiple folks, and that was already a path to move forward. Understanding cost is gonna be a tremendous lift. And we have probably higher, priorities here in our community, particularly 81 and some other things we talked about. But if we aren't at least planning or having a protocol of how to get rail to Western Maryland, it's never gonna happen. And so, as respectful as I can, as far as the 30-year plan of transit expansion, a bus from Hagerstown to the rest of the state is just, it's not really equitable in that manner either. And then lastly, on 81, again, you're gonna hear that time and time again. But a couple things that you want to touch on, I think is very important for the community to be aware of. Again, I appreciate you only being here to cover this as well. But Scott talked about our project is ranked 37th out of 48. I went through the CTP, the project scores at the back of it. I don't know if they're different than what Scott reported, but it's not even listed in those project scores. There's not one project west of Frederick County. There's only one project in the Eastern Shore, which is Kent County. And so again, we spoke about this last year with Secretary Reedville. When we talk about our entire state, and the administration talks about leaving no one behind, and then we see project scores that no one in Western Maryland has a project, and no one in the Eastern Shore has a project, and their score is, that causes concern. We appreciate the schedule. The 2027, you're talking about the 2A, 2B. The reality is, of the last 4 years of administration, nothing has really happened with 81. The money was removed, the money was put back, years were extended, but nothing has really actually happened. And we continue to have accidents time and time again. We pulled some crash data here most recently. 2023, there was 390 accidents in 81. 2024, there was 458 accidents. This year, we're trending in at 450. We're talking about close to 40 accidents per mile on that interstate. I don't know what checks that box will enhance safety, enhance the infrastructural system, and create economic development more than 81 does. We don't have people dying on the interstate. We have accidents every day. Our communities are crippled. As Commissioner Klein did a great job explaining just in the past few weeks how that's happened. I know you guys see some things. Secretary Bill, I know that I sent a letter to Governor Grouse about 3 or 4 weeks ago when the CTP came out. We talked about the design money for phase 3 and phase 4. And I think it's very important. We touched on it, but when you look at that in the design money here, there's a zero. So how can we talk about it? We're actually committed to doing 81, moving it forward. Well, we're not even talking about building phase 2 for another 2 years. That might be done in probably about 2030, 31. We've not committed 1 penny for design money in 3 and 4. The reality of that project being done at anywhere close in probably the lifetime of the insurance is not good. And we continue to see happen on all these tragic accidents. The newspapers reported in the past with the TV station of fiery death crash. That was the headline all the time. And we continue to see this time and time again. So again, I want to remain positive. I look forward to working with them here. We want to continue these partnerships. But that's what we actually need. We need a partnership. We don't need an agreement. We all agree. We need a true partner here for the state. And we haven't gotten that so far with this administration. We're hopeful we continue to have that going forward. But if we're going to actually be committed to do 81 and fix 81, we actually have to do it. We can't continue to talk about it and see no action. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator. It would be all right. There's a couple things that you want to follow up on. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You brought up a lot of good points. In the meetings, right? We have to make sure everyone knows what's going on, knows, some of the things that are happening behind the scenes. Because there is progress, to your point, progress, partnership, action, I think is also something we want to see. Another part of progress is or partnership is probably money, right? There's that's what we want to see there too. On the aviation front, I think that what Neil pointed out in the $3.5 million that's in there now, what could you do with another $1 million? It's got my wheels turning, right? Oshkosh does a great job with return of investment. I think that the money that is spent on regional aviation, it goes a long way. And I think that we need to be looking at ways to promote economic development in all parts of the state. And I think our regional airports is a great way to do that. So that point is well taken. We're gonna, see where we land with this final CTP coming out in January. But I do appreciate the fact that when regional aviation was discussed here, it wasn't just in terms of what the Hagerstown Airport needs. It's thinking about all of those regional airports together. And I think when we talk about Hagerstown, Salisbury is the other one that kind of comes into that same kind of quality. Yes, it's not a state aviation asset, but it's one we care deeply about. And so point is well taken there on that request.
On the MARC plan, yes, bus is what we came away with. Bus is what we came away with for the immediate short-term best opportunity. And I appreciate the advocacy for, continuing to look at rail. We have representatives from MTA here, not just Travis, we have Daryl here as well. And so we know that continuing to look at that corridor and with, your continued advocacy and continued support from others, we're gonna continue to be looking at how to make the most of the Brunswick line for all of Western Maryland. So just wanted to acknowledge that as well. I will ask Administrator Pines to come up and perhaps Linda as well, to do maybe a little bit more of a deeper dive on everything we've got going on 81, both in terms of what to expect with delivery of phase 2 project, kind of maybe a little bit of where we're at with the phasing, because coming up with the phasing option really was in order to try to keep things on as aggressive in the delivery schedule as possible. We do have some challenging stakeholders that we're working with, but we hear you loud and clear that we need to see progress in delivery of that project. In terms of prioritization, I want to thank Jim Critchwell for being an active partner in talking through this prioritization progress. It is a pilot. We are not done yet. And I think that between last legislation and now, there's been a lot of dialogue. We probably had 3 or 4 separate meetings just on projects in Washington County. We're having those conversations all around the state. And we do understand that a one-size-fits-all approach will not work when we're talking about unique counties that each have their own priorities, geographies, needs, and the fact that you've got these 2 major freight corridors in what other people might assume is a very rural county. So how do we capture all that from a quantitative data perspective? We know it's not going to be perfect, and that's why that's just one piece to the equation when it comes to how we make our project decisions. So hear you loud and clear on that one. We know that there's definite safety needs along the corridor, and we're going to continue to look at what the data inputs are in the prioritization process to make sure that it best accurately reflects things when we're looking at doing that quantitative analysis statewide, but know that there are going to be other data inputs in how we ultimately are making our project program decisions. But really do want to emphasize that the progress that has been made and the time that has been spent by county staff and other stakeholders to make sure that we are hearing and listening and not moving forward before trying to get it kind of as right as possible. I owed one more shout out, I think, to the MPO, and I didn't want to forget Matt, just because I think it was something that one of the commissioners mentioned about thinking outside of the box and the work here at the county. I just wanted to acknowledge the use of federal funds and seeking federal grants, federal programs in this county. I think that the work done through the MPO and through county staff is just tremendous. Didn't want to forget that, but I will now turn it over to Administrator Pines to give us our I-81 update for the day.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Secretary. I'll go backwards a little bit before I cover 81, back to the prior commissioner comments about I-70 in St. Paul. We have been making some adjustments to the signing. We've also been, we have planned some pavement improvements leading up to the bridge to try to help to provide a little bit of a better transition there to help to mitigate what we've seen. Through our interstate projects, we've been including work zone speed safety cameras to try to get the speeds down. But as Scott had mentioned, there is a lot of work in the education front that we'll need to work on together to get folks to comply. I actually have a report that's due to the legislature on the automated speed enforcement program. And unfortunately, we still have a lot of people that are speeding at very excessive rates. Those types of things lead to crashes. And unfortunately, really this is about driver behavior a lot of the time. And so we're gonna make some design adjustments to try to do the engineering work to make it better. But it does involve really getting the message out to slow down in our work zones and keep our workers safe. It's critical that we do that on all of our projects. It's not uncommon that in our major construction projects that we do have some operational coordination that needs to happen. I hear you loud and clear. When we're in Western Maryland, you definitely have to think about snow. And so here you on US 40, Linda and I and the team will get together with the county to think about how we can make sure we manage snow well during those construction detours and have that well coordinated. In terms of I-81, we are making progress. I recognize that when we were talking about in the FY 25 through 30 fiscal cliff and the very substantially different CTP than the one in front of you, we had slowed progress. But as Scott mentioned, our project portal page provides regular updates. I would encourage everybody to go read that. Recently, we have finished the semifinal review stage of design. We've been out doing field work like the geotechnical information that's required for bridge borings, et cetera, for the structures along the route. And the really, really big item is the coordination that we've been doing with the railroad at the north end of the project. This project ends near the CSX Railroad. We'd originally planned for the stormwater management facilities to be near their property area. That is not something that's going very well in the discussions. And so rather than delaying the entire project, we looked at how could we break this up into phases in order to be able to keep the overall schedule and allow for additional time to negotiate with CSX on how to accommodate stormwater management. It is likely to impact the cost of the project because the stormwater previously would have been able to fit in normal stormwater management ponds, and we're now looking at underground structures that will need to be constructed along the corridor to manage the volume of impervious from the lane widening. So the project has a lot of complexities to it, and it takes time to work through those. We're doing that. We are actively working on it. Hear you that there's a strong desire to keep going on phase 3 and 4, but I just don't want anybody to think that we're not working. Again, go look at the page. We are moving actively on the project, and happy to talk about I-81 as needed. So,
Well, quick follow-up and a conversation on City. On phase 3 and 4, what is the cost of the design? We talked about it at NACO, we're going to look back on that. If there was any money programmed in the out years for 3 and 4, what are we talking about exactly?
That we do have marked as a NACO follow-up. The team is still working together a high-level update from the planning study that was done previously, just to make sure we're at current year costs. We haven't noted that we've got to follow up to get the number on that. I don't have it.
If you can share that with the county folks and the leaders here, when you have that, that'd be greatly appreciated.
I'd like to give, we have a couple of state delegation members here still who have had the opportunity to speak, so I'd like to ask Senator Kane if he has any words he'd like to say.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Acting Secretary. Thank you, team for MDOT. Thank you for Washington County. Just got a couple little comments or questions. But it's all about coordination. At the end of the day, whether it be the state, the local, or we as the elected officials, we need to be able to coordinate and be in good conversation back and forth on how we go forward. I just want to say thank you very much. You guys have been very, very enlightening, but we all need to do a better job. We just need to do a better job. And not that we've not been doing a good job, we just need to do a better job. That being the case, I'm looking forward to some of the things that are going to happen in the next couple of days. Possibly is going to address some of the shoulder issues on I-81 to help with that. But I think it's most important, at the end of the day, the dollars that are being spent in Washington County, from Washington County government, or the dollars being spent from the state of Maryland, are dollars being spent in Washington County and in Western Maryland. That's important. We've heard a lot of times where we don't get enough love, but the love is dollars being spent. Now, I was talking to a constituent, well, I should say the constituent was yelling at me. But I said, do you want me just to tell them, to tell the contractors to go away, don't fix the bridge, don't do these things? And of course, the answer being suspiciously is no, don't do that. But I do think we can just all work together. But I think the one thing that we missed is educating the public. At the end of the day, I think this is going to be the death of our community. Really do. Figuratively and speculatively. People are paying more attention to their phones than they are driving down the road. It's just as simple as that. It used to be the phone has been replaced from eating the Big Mac and putting on your makeup, wherever you decide which your choice is. But we really need to, and I'm not preaching to the choir, I am preaching to the choir here, But anybody who is listening on YouTube, or anybody that's listening who might be writing an article, the best way that we as a community can work through all of the construction that is planned and is processing them is to show a little grace and respect to the other drivers that are on the road. Pay attention. Pay attention to what you're doing. And as I point to everybody, I'm putting 3 fingers right back at me. I'm just as guilty as the next one. That being the case, I'll get off the soapbox. I'm not that tall as you. Just got a question for Matt with the 522. One of the concepts was probably to put some form of sidewalks in 522, that bridge crossing. Yes. And I just don't want to ever miss the opportunity, maybe possibly a cantilever or something. The bridge itself is only so wide, and the amount of truck traffic that's going to be coming on the West Virginia side because of the bypass around Berkeley Springs. I just don't want to forget that opportunity. As it comes to transit, I do appreciate we're focusing on Hagerstown, Smithsburg, all those type of different things. But we've got a couple communities, Clear Spring, Hancock, where look, the volume isn't there for transit. But one of the things that, just to spur ideas or whatever, maybe there's a voucher program that we can work with the private sector, whether it be Uber or whatever, that we can give some of those rural communities that we're not going to be able to put transit in those communities, the dollars aren't there. But that doesn't mean those people are having problems getting to work or getting to hospital and those type of stuff. So maybe there's an ability to work on that. I used to be county commissioner in Allegheny County, and every 4 or 5 years we have to bring in a group study the transit system and all that kind of stuff. And I really asked a weird question. I said, has anybody ever hired you all to dismantle transit? And they said, what are you talking about? Dismantle transit? And I said, let's do it a little bit different. And this was before Uber, this was all before those type of rideshare programs. I said, what if we just did a voucher program? We took $280,000 that Allegheny County was putting into transportation to match the federal dollars. And we kind of got over, we used to have all these big buses, now we've got smaller buses. But at the end of the day, it's just rethinking it. And so that's where that voucher problem comes into. When it comes to the MARC train, the senator is 100% correct. It's important that we get that there. But as a side note, the MARC train could, through operational funding, go ahead and come all the way to Cumberland. They might be able to do some kind of a stop in Hancock. That would be capital, because we would have to then create an actual station at that point. But from an operational standpoint, getting more money into MARC and having it come all the way out would be a step in the right direction. That when we were able to then get the dollar amount to bring the line up here. Last but not least, we all understand 81 and we all have to be a partner in it. Now I represent Garrett and Allegheny County as well. People who live in Garrett and Allegheny County, and Madam Secretary, I shared this last year with the predecessor, that look, Allegheny and Garrett County are important. SHA will have always made sure of that. But for our region in Western Maryland, I-81 is most important. And while I don't want to park anything that we're not doing in Garrett and Allegheny, but making sure that we're all part of the being at the table and everyone's being involved, 81 is that much more important that needs to be done. Mom always told me if I was going to get second helpings, I had to finish everything on my plate. And so we're willing to, let's make I-81 a priority. Let's get the funding in for 3 and 4. I appreciate everything you all are doing. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you for recognizing me.
And then I believe Krista Whittington from Delegate White's office would like to say a few words.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Delegate Weibel was unable to be here with a scheduling conflict this morning, but wanted to thank each and every one of you for all the work that you do for us here in Washington County. His priority message to you is the same as everybody else, I-81 and 70 and the widening and the urgency of those widenings. you know, recently we lost the death of a public servant here in Washington County. And she could be anyone else's sister, mother, coworker, and it hurts. And we just really emphasize that importance. Again, thank you, and thank you for reaching out to our offices. Keep in touch if there's anything you need.
Scott, I'll turn it back over to you.
Just want to say with that, thanks again for coming up here every year. We appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you more with the different offices. And we all have our parts in this, and we'll work together and move forward this year. So thank you much.